Good afternoon. How's
Good,
everybody doing?
good afternoon. Everybody's good.
Good.
Good afternoon.
We got people that are having internet problems again tonight, just like last night.
Good afternoon.
The boom went off right at 7 o'clock. They got off the hook last night. I was mid rant when the power went off at most places, or the internet went down. We had a terrible storm here right before class and knocked my power out, but I got it back in time for class. But looks like it's about to happen again tonight. So we'll do the best we can. And just like last night, one group lost their internet. And so I just told them I knew they'd do a good job presenting, just upload it and move on.
Go in your room.
And so let me.
Hey, Dr. Lamb, Olivia's going to be a few minutes late. She had to take her daughter over to her mom's.
That's fine. All right, so let me share my screen. Let's get started. We're at the last week. We just have our last case study tonight. I've done all the content. I did want to do if I can get my internet went out here a few minutes ago, so I'm hoping that everything will be okay. So I'll have to reload some stuff here. And so I put an update on that story that I've been referencing all semester about the clerk of court in Kentucky, that everybody was boosting her up when she wouldn't follow the law and issue the marriage license to the two gay men. And so under tonight's lesson, I have added the update that came out earlier this week. So let's look at that update. Let's see what happens when the community's boosting you up and telling you to break the law and it'll be okay and everything will be good. Let's see what's happened to that lady. Because she went with, what her personal opinion rather than what the law was, her personal conviction. So let me go here to our shell and let's see. I uploaded it under week module 10. Move that out of the way. Clerk of court right here. Here's the link to it. All right. So her latest is, and this came out last Thursday, her latest is now, after she got jail time, $100,000 fine, and lost her job, now a federal judge has now ruled that she's got to pay $260,000 to the plaintiff's attorneys now, in addition to all the other things. She's lost her home. She's lost her job. She now is indigent. She can't pay the $260,000. I don't know what's going to happen to this lady, but you can read it. All the things that has happened to her, but now everybody in her community was boosting her up. You go, girl. But that same crowd that was boosting her up, I'm betting they're not helping pay her bills now that she doesn't have a job and she owes all this money, and having served jail time, her employment prospects probably aren't too good. I mean, most Walmarts just have one greeter. And so I don't know. I really don't know what she can do with mostly people who have a criminal background go to work in construction. I don't know what this lady's going to be able to do. Now, I'm torn whether I should feel bad for her or not, but understanding when you take a position like she took, clerk of court, your job is to uphold law and policy. That's what your job is. When you take a job in school administration, your number one is you uphold law and policy, period. That's what they hired you for. And there's never a case when, like from our last case study, community pressure or any of that kind of stuff, there's never an excuse not to follow law and policy. Because the bill always comes due. Always. I tell people all the time, it'll be okay until it isn't. And then one day, the bill will come due. And that's why I told you about the book. When you become principal at a new school, somebody from the central office within a day of you getting there will come out and share the book with you. All the law and policy violations that have been going on in the school, that no matter how long they've been going on, they have to stop today, and you have to be the bad guy. That's how it works. That's your job in this business, is law and policy. Not because I teach it, but law and policy is the most important thing. I also teach it in the doctoral program as well. I was concerned in my 738 policy class, which is the doctoral level of this course at the superintendent level. I was concerned when the first level of my first assignment for that group was to identify who the policy players were in their district, and none of them said county commissioners, not a one. And they said, well, but they're not part of the school system, but they are a part of the school system. What is their role? They're the people who levy the taxes and give the money to the school system. They are the ultimate policy players in a district. The ultimate policy players. So you need to know what you're getting yourself in for. I'm still with you. My signal's a little unstable. I'm still with you. I've been on the phone a couple times in the last couple of days with one of my former students. He's looking to get into school administration, and he's got a job offer. And one of the things that I've been talking to him about is, bet on yourself. Take the gamble on yourself. But understand it is a gamble. But the way that you can make it a less of a gamble to give up your safe teaching job and the role you're in is to make sure that you're going to follow law and policy. To make sure that that's going to happen. Yes, it's a new job. It's a new career. It is, there's the fear of the unknown, but I would contend you know the job now. You know what you're supposed to do. You've been through a rigorous program. You'll round out your adventure next semester, where you'll work on your personal leadership, and you'll work on standards and those kinds of things that fully develop, hopefully, your leadership. But you know how to run schools now, and you know the purpose of schools. You know what you have to do. You have to follow law and policy. So I'm going to tell you the same thing I've told Gary the last couple of times. Bet on yourself. You know what to do. You know what the job entails. You know what is going to be asked of you at the next level. You're ready for that. You're ready for that challenge. I feel supremely confident that you are well prepared for that challenge. It's all going to boil down to the decisions that you make or don't make. And I know that you know the right ones to make. All right. Who's our first group tonight? I'm excited to see your presentations. I'm interested to see that.
Jeanette, are my team ready?
Sure.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Jeanette, you still in the
We'll
recording?
fall on the sword. All right.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Whitney will not be here. She having issues with her internet.
Yep.
Overview of case study number 4, inclusion. In this case study, there is an issue at school located in the rural, semi-rural Chile. It seems that some parents were concerned about their children in 3rd grade not receiving the quality education that the other Section 3A were receiving, due to the fact that the 3B students were helping the special needs students. The 3rd grade delegate of the PTO Humberto, requested a meeting with the principal, Eugenia, and explained to Eugenia this concern. Eugenia, not having a clue about the situation, believed that the total inclusion were essential in fulfilling the school mission. She went to a colleague, a technical coordinator, which she valued his opinion since he was previously a university professor and had more than one advanced degree. He was asked to look at how other teachers resolved this concern in their classroom. Eugenia spoke to Sylvia, which was the third grade teacher in 3B, about the concern. Sylvia stood her ground and expressed that the students were learning by the method she was implementing. Nevertheless, Eugenia needed to resolve this issue. Question number 1. How might the principal approach this in future meetings with his teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? We have first point, Eugenia should have known this was going on. She should be in the classroom often enough to know what instruction looked like in each teacher's classroom. Point 2, she should have asked the parents if they had spoken to Sylvia, the 3B teacher, prior to bringing this to her. Teachers should be the first line of communication for parents, as that relationship needs to be strong to best support students. Third point, Eugenia should meet with the SIT to discuss the issue and agree upon a balance between the two approaches going forward. Point number 4, in the future, Eugenia should be clear about expectations from the beginning of the school year. Second part of question 1, leaving the instruction of the special needs students to the specialists, as Sergio, the 4A teacher, suggested, is not legal. A student IEP requires accommodation from all instructors, not only those who are considered specialists in teaching special needs students, especially if the least restricted environment is a general education classroom. Although some of the second grade teachers felt that the parents were too overbearing, this method they were using to teach both special needs and non-disabled students is the approach that's best for all students. Differentiation for students is the best practice for all students, as even students without disability can be on a different level within the same classroom.
All right. So I took question 2. What is the path that Eugenia should take? She did schedule a meeting to ease the tension between the grade levels. Was this the right approach? I believe it was a good first step, but Eugenia needs to look out for the needs of the students first and foremost. What should she do next? She should look at the state and federal law regarding public education. Are all the students afforded the same free and fair education as in the Leandro case? She should intervene and ensure that all students are being serviced and taught to their abilities. All right, and then there's 2 points of view offered in the case study. The first one was, in order to improve learning, guaranteeing curricular coverage of all study plans and programs is a critical factor. Silvio believes that it is not the classroom teacher's responsibility to service students with special needs. That is why we have specialists. I don't agree with that. I mean, that's illegal, and the specialists have a job, and the classroom teachers also need to be a part of that. You can't just throw them out to the wind and then forget about it. So that led us to point of view 2. And I said, don't special needs kids have the right to be educated and served by teachers and progress within their own capabilities? I agree more correctly with that one. And next slide. All right, so, okay, question 4.
Question 4, what kind of collaboration from the children's family might the principal and the teacher propose to improve the inclusive education program, encourage an appreciation for diversities? Parents of both sets of students should meet with teachers prior to school starting to learn the instructor's teaching style and ask any question that they may have. Open communication between parents and the teacher is a must. This issue should have been avoided had parents reached out to Sylvia prior to going to the principal. Students-led conferences would be a good way for all students to share what they are learning and help the parents understand even their non-disabled students are learning. Group projects or family nights that include both disabled and non-disabled students would provide an opportunity for parents to come in and see how all students can work together and how each student is learning and how to respect their peers.
Question number 5. As an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might Ishmael, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony out of the differences in opinion among the teachers? Well, first of all, show that there is an appreciation and a respect for all opinions as it pertains to the teachers, the parents, and definitely the policies and procedures. We talk about definitely inquiring about the possibility of hiring an inclusion teacher, because there was nowhere in the scenario that said that there was a teacher of inclusion in this scenario. Inquire about students being mainstream as opposed to using the inclusion method, where students can be mainstream in the least restricted environment when they are learning new content and then pulled out when the new content has been taught. According to the presentation, from what I read, there is no particular law that says that inclusion should occur in a school, but however, a student should be mainstream in the least restricted environment per laws if their IEP such so stated. Also providing professional development and best practices to support students in the least restricted environment. Next slide. Also, Ishmael could have recused himself from the situation, being that he was not the SPED coordinator or the SPED teacher. When he was approached by the principal about the situation. Also, he could have explained that due to the FERPA laws, he is not actually at liberty to discuss the details of any student's IEP. Also, coordinate opportunities for teachers to observe other teachers that have students that are mainstream into their least restricted environment, or that is using the inclusion method if there are other teachers within the district that is doing so. Also, another option could be that they could hire an interventionist that could work with the advanced students so that the students so that the students' needs can be addressed, or the team can teach with the SPED teacher to ensure that all students are getting the best support that's needed, as far as maybe possible small group instruction for the students that are well above, or those students could be pulled out, whereas the teacher could work with the students that are on or have IEPs inside the classroom.
Question 6. What action might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experience they have observed among the children? Sylvia could first gather her data from the achievement of the class and present it to the principal. Point 2, she could ask the principal for her advice to share the achievements with the parents on both sets by email, class tag, or any other communication outlet the school may possess. Point 3, while sharing the achievements, let the parents of both sets of classes know that they are welcome to come in and observe the experience for themselves, as students do succeed with peer-to-peer collaborations. Last point, Sylvia can start sharing the successes on a quarterly basis with pictures, maybe videos, and interviews. Of course, we know that she would definitely need to get permission from the parents first with her students and share with the families to build a relationship as they know what is going on in the classroom. In conclusion, Eugenia should have known about Sylvia's instructional strategies way before being told by a parent. Having another employee to investigate how teachers are handling the matter could cause more harm than good. Since this involved only one teacher, Eugenia should have talked to the other teachers privately and kept it confidential. Sorry. As a leader, you need to stand by your subordinates. While Eugenia felt this method was close to the school mission, she kind of felt like that she kind of left her dry and was not fulfilling what I think was support for her. The last point is that an IEP team should have been involved since they are the expert in this specific area, and they could have helped Eugenia with by providing the laws and the policies.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you. You can stop your share now. All right. Let's link this back to what we've learned this semester, and we may even touch some things you've learned previously. When we started the OMA this semester, the purpose of the OMA was to develop a legal master schedule, right? All right. One of the first things you had to do in task one, you had to put together some different items. And then your first real task was to go out and to do an audit of all your special populations and exceptional children's programs. All right. So Mary even mentioned this looks like an inclusion model, but there was no push-in teacher in that room. So we would have to determine that this is a mainstream model, right? All right, we need to know what the law says that we're doing. What has our district adopted as our delivery model? All right, so it appears to me, and Mary's exactly right, that this is not an inclusion, rather this is a mainstream model. And we've learned the difference in the two. One's a pull out, one's a push in. One, you know, you push the kid, you know, you put the kids out into the regular classrooms. Now, what's the scheduling rationale, the legal scheduling rationale? There's 5 parts. First is federal law, right? That's what we're talking about. Federal programs come first. And then state law, local board policy, our performance data from our teachers, and lastly, teacher input. I would argue that this master schedule was built on number 5 being first, teacher input, based on the fact that all the EC and HG kids were in the same room so that one could teach the other. If we're doing a mainstream model, can all of our EC kids be in the same room? No. No, that's correct. That's the first problem is our master schedule is not legal. Because it's okay to do a mainstream model. It's okay to put, you know, you want to push those kids into regular classes. And if you're not doing inclusion, there's not a teacher that goes with them. But we can't push them all into the same room. Because again, that's not least restrictive environment. They're all in the same room. So we see that we did not follow proper legal master scheduling protocol, the rationale there. So there's our first problem. Somebody had to know that this teacher was going to use the high ones to teach the low ones because they put them in the same room. How did the principal not know that? Well, it's real simple. She delegated the master schedule to somebody else. You can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility. Just like fundraising, it comes back to you. Now, you're exactly correct. She should have been in the room, should have been knowing what was going on, and she should have known what instructional methods are being used. Do you think that any of those kids in there, the EC kids, had written in their IEP that the other kids in the room were going to teach them? I suspect not. That was a violation of the law. What about the AIG kids? Don't they have an IEP as well? Yes, they do. Do you think it said in there that all they were going to do is do review work, much lower level than they were all day long, every day? I don't think that was in their IEP either. So we have violated federal law. We're not meeting these kids' IEPs. Now, when we talk about providing, you know, support to our teachers or backing them up, we can only back them up when they're doing the legal things. We have no duty or responsibility, moral, legal, or otherwise, to support teachers who are not following the law. Now, she didn't follow the law in this, but now you can't say, well, you know, I'm gonna back. No, what was going on in the room completely violated all the EC laws. Whether if you want to argue that it's an inclusion model, there's a problem there. If you want to argue it's a mainstreaming, I'm arguing that it's mainstreaming. You broke all kind of laws on mainstreaming. You mentioned FERPA, absolutely. You can't just be sending random people down to the room. That's a FERPA violation. All right, so we're not doing walkthroughs. We didn't do the master schedule. Whoever did it backwards in terms of they put teacher input first and federal law last. That's never going to be a good thing. AIG kids aren't having their IEPs meet. Why do you think I put that document under this week in terms of basic ed law? We tend to forget in this case study because they're not mentioned, and y'all mentioned it, and thank you for doing that. Nobody's addressing the needs of the basic ed kids either. They're not getting their needs met. That's state law, isn't it? What's the rationale? Federal law first, then state law. What's state law? Every kid's got to get a basic education. So we've already violated federal law, state law. We've got the protocol upside down. We've put teacher input before either of those. Now, what about local policy? Where's the local policy violation? That's in the delivery model. Your school district decided whether you were going to do inclusion or mainstreaming, and we've already figured out that's not happening either. So we're over on the list of 5 so far. Now you could argue that maybe she gets the best results on that, but we don't know that. But we might could give you number 4. But we've completely whiffed on the on 4 of the 5 of the scheduling rationales. We've completely to produce a legal. I told you our job this semester was not to produce a master schedule, but a legal master schedule. Any nitwit passing by in a car, we could flag them down. They could do a master schedule, but will it be legal? That's defensible? No, this one's not legal. That's the heart of our problem is we started with a master schedule that's not legal. After that, it's all downhill. There's not much. There's no fix for that. And then we have a principal that's not getting out of her office, not knows what's going on in the rooms. And then when somebody confronts her about it, she sends somebody else. Would you say that's good administrative practice? Absolutely not. What have we told you? Walkthroughs. We had you actually do some yourself last semester to try to learn the value of a walkthrough, just that 15-minute snapshot, so that you'll know why you think we had you do that. In case a parent comes and complains, you've been in that room, you know what's going on. That's the value of walkthroughs, folks. Right there. All right. Also, teacher evaluations. If you're doing teacher evaluations, how do you not know what she's doing? Well, you have to go stay a whole class period. I got a question whether that's happening. I had somebody last night, and this is not a bad suggestion, say, well, what we could argue with the parents is that we're doing Kagan's, cooperative learning. And I said, whoo, be careful with that. Anytime you start throwing out some of these controversial programs like Kagan or Done and Done's learning styles, or what happened when we talked about Common Core? One side of the political aisle lost their mind. And it was the same things we'd been doing for years. But because we put Common Core on it, I can tell you right now, Kagan in rural districts, they'll burn your house down if you talk about Kagan or talk about Montessori or developmentally appropriate or diversity inclusion. They'll burn your house down. You just get deeper into trouble by trying to justify this instructional method by using something like, one of these controversial programs. That's not smart. Just take your lumps. I would not tell anybody I was doing Kagan unless my district had adopted Kagan. Do not ever say we're doing this. Well, we didn't know that the district was doing this, and that's news to the people over at the central office. And now you've got a problem with them. Why are you doing this highly controversial program out here at this school? Social emotional learning. Some districts, as long as your district has adopted that as a district initiative, then you can do social emotional learning. I've got one of my doctoral students that's doing it because her district is doing social emotional learning. I've got another one I told her that, she'd have to fight me if she wanted to do that because her district is absolutely banned it. You've got to understand that sometimes you can get yourself in bigger trouble by by trying to get yourself out. And so I wouldn't use that one. Now, possible fixes, solutions. Those skip nights that we talk about in our long-term goals, you think they've been doing any of those to tell any of those parent nights to inform parents of all the curricular programs and the things that they're doing in their schools? Of course not. Of course not. And so you can begin to, you think they're doing professional development on any of these curricular ideas or on EC or any of the EC models? Are they doing any PD on that? Of course not. Now, I am not anti-teacher, you know that. But why is it we're allowing teachers to debate what delivery model we're using? That's not in their purview. Now, I'm gonna be ugly, and I'm telling you, don't do as I say, not as I do. Be kind and be polite. But I've been known more than one time to say to a teacher, today's my day to be in charge. I'll let you know when it's your day. Because I'm the one who's legally responsible for this circus and all you monkeys. My name's on the checks. And I'm responsible for what happens here legally. And, when it's your day to be in charge, I'll let you know. You don't get an opinion on what the district has adopted as, again, board policy, number 3. You don't get an opinion on whether or not what our delivery method for exceptional children's services is. The board voted on that, whether it was an inclusion, mainstreaming, or a hybrid model of that. They're the ones that decided that for your district, not us here at the school level. What was it? I had a student one time said, well, if we don't like the grading scale at our school, we just change it. You don't get to do that. That's board policy. You don't get to change the delivery method. Why? There can be no debate on what our delivery method is. That's number 3. Board policy comes before number 5, teacher input. We have 5 rationales for the master schedule, which runs our school on a day-to-day basis. The master schedule is the heart of our school. It runs our school on a day-to-day basis. If you as the principal don't make out that schedule, you don't run your own school. And if you don't do it the right way, federal, state, local board, performance, teacher input, in that order, it won't be legal. This is an example of an illegal master schedule and all the trouble that it gets you into and all the associated pieces that you need to make a school run to operate on a daily basis. No professional development, no parent meetings, letting teachers make out the schedule, violating federal law, putting all EC and AG kids in one room, letting low ones teach high ones or high ones teach low ones. All these things are against, there's a law or a policy that says don't do that. And you can't override all that with number 5. Well, that's what the teachers wanted to do. This is a case where, again, the principal is completely not the principal in this building by name only. Somebody else is running this building, and it's not her. But she's the one that's going to be responsible for all this. Because do you think these parents are going to quit complaining? Do you think that they haven't already got in touch with their advocate? Do you not think that they've already called everybody that'll listen, that'll take their call and send emails? So that's the notion. Dr. Mary said, explain the performance rationale. Number 4 is performance. We don't have the teachers that, we have the teachers that we have, not always the ones that we want. Now, as we learned last semester with the APTEL, we need to have a plan to grow them into the teachers that we need. But unfortunately, they aren't all there. So we have to look at our performance data, and Dr. Hamilton talked to you specifically. We have to look at that performance data, not only what the data is, but where it comes from. So let's talk about those two things. And the example that she got was 40% of her school report card came from 3rd grade. If she has a choice of where to put the extra teacher, where's she going to put it and reduce class size? 3rd grade. That's what we're talking about, performance data. Knowing what metrics compose your school report card. You know, EOG scores, what grades matter in high school, what courses count, which ones don't on EOCs. Those kind. Know what the system is. Know what the game is. Don't hate the game. Don't hate the player. Hate the game. But you got to be the player here. You make decisions about, all right. That's not a counting grade over there. I'm gonna put this. I'm gonna put this weak teacher down there. This new teacher in 2nd grade. That there's no EOG in 2nd grade. No state tests in 2nd grade. That's what.
Okay, so I guess that's the concept that we were doing. I guess in South Carolina, whereas for SC Ready, 45% count
Right.
for ELA, 45% for math, and 10% for science. So looking at the rationale as to putting the stronger teacher in those areas where the 45% is as opposed to the 10%. Gotcha.
That's it. And then you
Gotcha.
look at their scores, and but again, look at the teachers' growth scores. And Dr. Hamilton showed you some of her teachers again, where some of them got, she had some that got really good scores with the lower kids and not so much with the higher kids. Okay, which one should you have them teaching? Not only what subject, like Mary just talked about, whether your weaker teachers might go to science because it's only 10%, and you're stronger to math and ELA. Within the math and ELA, track your kids low, middle, and high. EVOS does that for you. SLOs does that for you in South Carolina. Which teachers get the best results with which of those groups of kids? Make those decisions. Principals will deny it, but the ones that are truthful will, maybe off the record, will acknowledge that somewhere in their building, they've got a whiteboard gridded off, and they put stickies with teachers' names. They got the courses over on the left in a different period, and they won't tell you that they're smart enough to do this all by computer. They're not. They still use the old sticky method on the whiteboard and write teachers' names, and they move them around. The trick is whose name goes on what sticky, goes in what square. That's what we're talking about here. Which kids, even within ELA and math, you got a history department in high school's got 6 history teachers. Which ones teach which of the 6 history courses? Which ones get the best scores in the in US versus which ones gets, I told you the story. I inherited a high school AP European teacher of the 8 that I had, or 10, ever at 12. I think I had 12. I had a large high school. I think I had 12 history teachers, and he taught European AP, but he was 0 forever. He'd never had a kid pass the exam ever. Why would I have? Well, he'd been there the longest. So, it ain't about time. It's about talent. I moved him down to teach the 9th graders that they didn't take an exam that hurt us on the report card. Did he like that? No. Did that matter to me? Not at all. It kind of made me happy. My personality type. I enjoyed that he was upset. Because he was stealing money. He wasn't teaching kids. He was accepting his check under false pretenses every month. I mean, I saw no evidence that he could teach a lick. To say he was a bad teacher was an insult to bad teachers everywhere. He was no teacher at all. How do you have European AP kids and not a one? And every kid every semester in Charlotte-Mecklenburg took the exam because the district paid for it. We have the AP high school, AP high school diploma in Charlotte. So the district pays for the exams. He was 0 forever. He'd never had a kid to pass. Ever. I saw no evidence he could teach even a little bit. Why was he getting to teach, an elite group? He obviously couldn't teach them. Now, he probably couldn't teach the 9th graders any better, but he wasn't killing me on his test scores in the 9th grade. Now, that gave me time either to get him better or get him gone. Now, I don't have to tell you which I opted to do. He worked for somebody else the next year. But it gave me some breathing room. But, you know, you either got to get better or get gone if you're O forever. I mean, if you've never had a kid to pass the test, not even one, and you've taught that for 6 years and you yet to have a kid pass, I don't believe you could claim that's teaching. And so that's what we're talking about on performance. Now, do we want to grow them all through that professional growth plan where they're good with all the kids in their room, and the young ones, we get them up to a level? How many years does it take? I'm going to use the term cost effective. That's not really, we call it that, but that's not really the best nomenclature to use. But how many years, when you get a BT, how many years does it take till they're what we call a wagon puller? They're fully formed teacher. How many years until, you know, they're as good as they're going to get? How many years does that take? David said 3. Sean said 5. They're both right. The answer is 3 to 5. I don't make the rules. I don't make the rules. I'm just telling you what the data tells us. Now, the variation there is, of course, grade level and content area. That's the variation. So David's right in that if we keep them in one grade in the lower grades, they can get up to speed in about 3 years. Middle school and high school takes a little bit longer because of the variation in the courses. You know, I've told you, I taught everything in the science department. I taught idiot biology mostly at Central, all the failures or the repeaters, but I taught everything from that to physics, chemistry. That's a pretty wide range. And so that's why for middle and high, it's kind of like 3, 4, 5. 3 for elementary, 4 for middle-ish, 5-ish for high school, 3, 4, 5, because of the variation in the content. One thing about it, there, you know, once you learn the content in second grade, you pretty much got it. But you can change courses day to day, period to period. And that variation because of that, it takes you longer to get really up to speed with all of those later courses. But they're exactly right, 3 to 5 years. We can't wait to 3 to 5 to start counting their test scores, can we? As soon as we put them in a counting course, there's no asterisk on the state report card say, yeah, these scores are low on reading, but they had a bunch of new teachers. It don't say that. It does not say that. So number 4 is the survival. It's being smart. Put the people who get the best results in the areas that are the most critical. That's what performance is all about. People who can get the best scores. You know, I told you the story. I took a PE teacher and put her in first grade. You know, because at the time of year that I had to replace the first grade teacher, what was my option? Would have been a beginner. Would have been a beginner. You say, well, first grade's not accounting. But yeah, but boy, them parents was, you know, you're replacing the best first grade teacher in the state with a beginner. How smart would that have been on my part? They already knew the PE teacher. She was a great teacher, well loved and respected in the community. I moved there and hired a beginner to teach PE. I mean, you know, most anybody can, you know, roll a ball out, you know, not step in the hole in the gym, you know, it's not a high skill job. You know, not as critical to the organization as replacing your best first grade teacher. You know, I'm not telling you how smart I was. I was just trying to survive, losing my best teacher, and you know, and what was considered to be the best first grade teacher in the state of North Carolina. She got money whipped away from me by DPI. DPI hired her away from me during the fall of the year. Department of Public Instruction came and offered her so much money, she left. You know, what am I going to do? So, you know, at least I was smart enough to know if I hire a beginning teacher, they'll just kill me. So I didn't put a beginning teacher in there. I put an experienced teacher that was teaching in another field, but I knew how to teach. And she was a dynamo. She did great because she was a great teacher. And she wasn't in a PE's not a critical need area. She was the best PE teacher I ever saw in my whole career. I saw a lot of them. She was the best one. But there's not a place on the report card for a score in PE. There, that M-class data down in the lower grades will kill you, and those parents will eat you alive. First grade kids are still pretty likable. Their parents still love them. It's not like middle schoolers where, or high school. It's not like them. Parents still involved in first grade. They'll kill you if you change their teacher. It's just rules of the road, folks. You got to know stuff like that. But that's what number 4 is all about, knowing the rules of the road. I love all teachers equally, but some of you count more than others. And I've got to make decisions based on that. I've got to make decisions based on performance. And as Dr. Hamilton taught you, certain things count more when it comes time to, and just like Dr. Mary just told you, when it comes time for SC Ready, which is your report card in South Carolina, that's your testing over there. That feeds your report card there. If it's 45, 45, and 10, my best teachers are doing in 45. The one that, is having trouble finding the building or going home with dry pants every day, that's the one on the 10 side. Yeah. This is real talk, folks. This is how it really works. There's no egalitarianism. I mean, democracy, everybody's equal. If you run school that way, you will not last. You better know talent when you see it. You better know talent when you see it. And you better know when you don't see it. And you better act accordingly. Yep. Better act accordingly. All right, who's next? I see Olivia's gotten in from stormy. It's stormy in the mountains here on the mountainous side of town. It about blew me away last night. Not a power out. Looks like we got another one coming up, but we're making it so far. All right, who's sharing? Let's go.
Y'all want to go next, guy?
Why not? I can take my lumps right off because I missed a key piece of the analysis, but I'm willing to take it.
I'm not gonna lump y'all tonight, so go ahead.
Yeah, well, they're getting up. While Roger pulling up, what I didn't appreciate, Dr. Lamb, in the reading through the case study is I did not appreciate that they had only put the GT kids and the SPED kids in the same class. When I read it, I thought they had put all the SPED in a small school into a single classroom with all the other regular ed folks. So I missed that piece of the analysis. So
yeah, they put them all in one room.
Yeah.
None of the other teachers wanted them.
Yeah.
They didn't want to have to deal with them, so they put them all in one room. And in order for that teacher to go along with that, she got the gifted kids too, so that the gifted kids could help the EC kids. That's the plan. I mean, this didn't happen incidentally or accidentally. That was the whole notion. I mean, what are the chances are if you place kids randomly in rooms that all the EC and all the AG would end up in the same room? I mean,
yeah, that's not going to happen.
Nah, that's what I mean. That now in statistics, and when we talk about probability is the basis of all inferential statistics. And when you have a normal distribution, you understand that you have the y-axis and you have the x-axis, and the tails of the curve can never touch the x-axis, which would mean something would be impossible. But this would be so close that, the tails of the curve on this distribution and the possibility of this happening would be so close that you probably couldn't blow smoke between them. So while you can't say it would be impossible in terms
highly improbable,
it's highly improbable that you could schedule a school and end up with all AG and all EC in one room.
Yeah,
that has to be intentional.
That answers a big question, because at one point I was going to ask you, my mom's a retired elementary school principal. So I called her up and was like, okay, I got thoughts on this, check my thoughts. And we were going round and round going, well, how is this violating law? I see now. Throw back that one. I guess we can go ahead and roll. We can roll on the first one, first slide. I got the first two questions. When I was writing about our thinking and writing about how might the principal approach this future meeting with teachers and necessary to choose one approach or the other, my first thought was taking the case study at face value. You've already made the mistake. You're in hot water. What are you going to do to figure this out? And I saw this as a split between short-term and long-term corrective action. Short-term corrective action, the principal's got to get her rear end out of the office, into the classroom. What's going on? What is the teacher? The teacher sounds like she's using a research-based method that could be efficacious. We need to figure out, is it? And look at the data. And if that is true, then we need to be communicating with the parents.
All right,
Calm down.
Time out here. Even let's kind of go back to Kagan. I was talking about that. There's two things about Kagan. I probably didn't explain that fully. One is it's got a name and people don't like it. But number two, it is an efficacious strategy for cooperative learning, except it may violate the kid's IEP. It may be the best thing since sliced bread, but if it's not in the kid's IEP, we can't use it. Therein lies that's that cooperative learning piece. That's that one teaching the other. If that's not in either of the kids' IEPs, then we should not be doing that.
Absolutely. And I like I said, I didn't read deep enough into that piece. Appreciate your thoughts on that one, sir.
I mean, that's what I'm talking about. That's why these kids come first. And that's why we have to do these audits in terms of what they're supposed to get. We got to know what we can and can't do, not only in terms of their placement in the rooms, but what they can do in the rooms with them, because those IEPs are very specific. And if it doesn't say, this kid's AIG IEP says that he's going to teach lower level kids every day, then he better not be teaching lower level kids every day.
Because my assumption,
and if the other one doesn't say he's going to get taught by one of his peers in his room, we better not be teaching him with one of the other peers in his room. Those things are very specific. Very specific.
Absolutely. And I didn't read that into there. I was thinking more Sylvia was trying to use things like jigsaw methods and I provide instruction and then I'll have experts get form around, then go back and do the formative assessments. But I made assumptions and I wouldn't know what's going on in that classroom unless I got in there. And that's what Sylvia's got to do and go, are you illegal? Or are you using best practices? We got to figure it out.
Yes, and sometimes best practices are not legal is the point.
Right. Yeah.
And when you say, well, this is the best practice, and this is the legal IEP, which one has supremacy? The legal IEP.
Legal IEP all the time. Absolutely.
All the time, every day.
Absolutely. So I think we've covered that point. I think when we're talking about the part of this question is how Sylvia is meeting with the teacher. I think Sylvia started Eugenia, the principal, meeting with the teacher. I thought her meeting started going off the rails when she chooses her words, say, hey, I'm taking the side of the parents. No, you're not on the parent side. You're not on the teacher side. You're on the kid's side. And thank you, Sylvia. I appreciate what you're doing. I'll be in your classroom tomorrow and have data ready for me when we talk afterward about performance of the children. See here. One thing I did pull out of this one is that the school, there is no standard delivery of method throughout the school. She's got to get long-term corrective action. She's got to get her hands around that. They all need to get on board with what is the method of delivery? How are they going to do it? All the teachers need to be on the same page. This is what we're doing. Don't care. Okay, now we say, create the standard, teach the standard, inspect to the standard, and all that process needs to happen in this school. And she's got to get on board with that one.
So when we did the APTEL, the professional growth plan, I showed you mine. Mine's called MTSS for Teachers. Now I picked Marzano because it's everybody knows. Now your district may have a different curricular path or program or process that they want to see. I happen to like Marzano, but what did you notice every semester that I had is we have to have professional development so that we're all on the same page, that we're doing Marzano. Now, we could have a little or a lot, we could have it whole group, small group, individual, but every semester, we're going to remind teachers that this is our curricular framework. Every school needs a curricular framework. Most of those are set by the district. And within that curricular framework, that's where we talk about, do we have a pull-out model? Do we have an inclusion model? Do we have a mainstream model? That's all in the curricular framework of the district. What are our teaching methods and strategies? Most of that stuff has been determined by your district to accommodate all these other programs. And so the failure here is to communicate that district framework to all the teachers, so that they shouldn't be debating which way, which is right, there isn't but one right way, the district framework, whatever we're going to do, because it accommodates all of these special population programs, whether it be Title I or EC or 504 or AIG or ELL or CTE. There's a framework. I'll give you a really concrete example of the differences in the frameworks between North and South Carolina and high schools. In North Carolina high school, CTE, which is a federal program, career and technical education, is delivered on site at the individual high school. In South Carolina, the framework is the kids are not delivered at the high school. They go to an area opportunity center, what used to be called area vocational centers, and they have their classes there. Do you think that affects the daily schedule? Do you think do you think that affects the master schedule and how the day-to-day works? Why, of course it does. But that's the framework. That's the curricular framework difference. I was in a district that adopted a curricular framework of I wrote it down. It's been so many years since I worked there. We did Dunn and Dunn's learning styles. We dropped that as our curricular framework. So what was our professional development every semester? Dunn and Dunn's learning styles. We actually had Dunn and Dunn come. Their husband-wife team from Johns Hopkins, or they were at the time, they've since retired. But we had them come. And we did the big one, and then we did smaller ones each time, but we had a curricular framework for our district. This is what we're going to do, and everything works off that framework. And we can't, it's just like, you've got a state grading scale, and then we have a district policy. You can't adopt your own at the school level. We have to stick with that curricular framework that the district has. And so part of the problem that I have with this case study, and you can hear it in my voice tonight, is all these people with opinions, they're trying to take my job, because my job is to make sure that we follow the policy of the district, which is this particular framework, which is mainstreaming. That's part of the framework here in this district. And we hire and staff our buildings based on that framework. Let me say that again. We hire positions and staff our buildings with different people and different job positions based on that framework that we've adopted for our district. And once we step outside of that, then we have a gap in services. Uh-oh. Can you say lawsuit? Can you say losing a lawsuit? When you systemically have a gap in services, it's not just an emergency or an incidental thing. When you have a systemic gap in services, that's when everybody lines up to sue you and win, because they know that you just opened up the checkbook. Everybody gets in line. And that's what you risk when you don't follow the curricular framework, because it's an intricate thing. Now, I'll be the first to say, as somebody who spent 12 years in the central office, we're all village idiots. But one of the things people say, well, how do y'all work hard? You got no kids over there at the central office. This is what we're talking about, how we make all this stuff work together. every division working and then working, putting it on, and is what is our framework? What are we working off of here? Does this conflict with that? One of the things you say, well, how many special ed teachers you have? How's that? Well, what about specials? If we don't have as many PE teachers, how are we going to get the regular teachers their planning period, their planning time? I mean, all this stuff at the central office level is so entwined. But when we figure all that stuff out at the central office level, and then we hand it to you as the principal out in the building and say, here's your curricular framework, here's your roadmap. All you got to do is follow. You don't have to figure it out. All you've got to do is follow it, train your teachers to follow it, and try to get them, improve them, and get them up to speed where they're as good a teachers as they can be, whatever that capacity is. That's your job. That's the policy we're handing you. And it encompasses federal and state law. That when we hand you this framework, we're going to send you enough help. We're going to have the right positions to make sure that our bases are covered legally for the feds and the state. And it's and board policy, here it is. Go to work.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb, and thank you, Sean. So I'm going to go on to the next slide here. I'll be brief because for me, I think this all applies to what Dr. Lamb has been trying to teach us all semester long is, know the law. The law kind of gives you your guideline of what you can and what you cannot do. So if your point of view is not even within the law, there's no need to even bring it up. We're wasting complete time. Right. So just make sure, I think when we are considering point of views, that it does follow the federal, the state, and on down the line. And that also we adhere to, those specialties, the IEPs, the 504s, and all these different things, and not have all of your higher educated kids teaching your lower educated kids, right? There has to be some type of balance in there some kind of way. And then collaboration, type of things that could have happened. Curriculum nights could have been going on all year long. She could have had presentations and invited parents in to the classroom, to see the scholars work and to know what they were doing and what they were learning. And I think Group A mentioned that there could also, the first group that went mentioned that there could be like student presentations at the different events and stuff like that. So yeah, get your parents involved, collaborate with them. You could even do surveys when they come to the events to see what they're thinking and to help you kind of drive that instruction. Olivia?
Hey. So what do we do? Since he is supposedly an expert in the learning and evaluation, he should be leading professional development. He should be, sharing with people and other teachers what inclusive teaching should be, even though they're not following that, this teacher doesn't even know, or the school doesn't even know what model they're following. But once they know what model they're following, he should be doing his job in leading professional development and team building, conflict resolution, and effective communication, because all teachers should know what the model is, which goes back to the principal not doing her job, essentially. But he could support teachers by facilitating discussions, organizing special education input, and then focus on the school's shared vision, whatever that may be. The shared vision in the case study was inclusion, but they don't even know, they don't even know what model they're following. Okay, next, please. So the actions Sylvia might take with the families, well, she should initially speak to the principal regarding the laws broken in her classroom and determining what model she should actually be following, because she probably thinks she's doing everything correctly with having those kids in her class. It's the principal's job to understand the laws and know what's wrong with the schedule versus not. But there again, if the principal's not coming around to classrooms, She doesn't even know what's going on. But Sylvia should there again see what the school-wide model is and what the district has adopted and follow that. Clearly she doesn't know exactly. She's just doing her best, what she thinks is best. She should also have regular communication. She should have regular feedback with parents and other teachers, and then communicate home with different ideas and have the parents be able to send feedback. And then, of course, have parent-teacher conferences and share what each child is doing well and then where their areas of struggles are. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, very good. All right. Let's circle back to the app cell. What were you asked to do in the app cell? What task A, task 1, you were asked to do what? Research and form a PLC, right? And then you were asked to do a data dive of your standardized scores, look for gaps, and do a gap analysis. I even talked to you about gap analysis. It's the gap times the number as your most pressing need. Remember, if you got a small group, but if you got a large group, maybe their gap's not as big, but there's more of them. You're trying to have an impact on your school. That's what we're talking about earlier. You got to be smart. You got to be strategic. Well, this group over here is, they're 10 points below the school average. Yeah, but there's only 5 in that group. This group over here, 347, they're 9 points below everybody else. Don't you think you should be addressing the 347 students rather than the 5? Remember, we had that conversation when we talked about gap analysis. Now, we talked about doing a gap analysis and looking. Now, I had a student a few years back when we were doing the app cell, and he said, we don't have any gaps at our school. Okay. He said, we're a charter school, we're a prep school. All our kids are 4 when they walk in the door. I said, that's true. And I said, they probably all still probably test as 4s all the way through because they can stay at home and test as 4s. What are you doing on growth? And that's when he said, huh? What are you doing on growth? I said, that they're at this level, proficient level 4. They were that way when you got them. You can't claim credit for that. And they're still that way because they're just that smart. So now we're talking about the AIG kids in that room. They're just that smart. So going on performance data, what's one thing is, the teacher says, look how high they're scoring. They were scored that high whether they came to school or not. The question there is, are you growing them or are you warehousing them? Yes, they're still going to score proficiency because that's who they are. They're smart kids. Their IQ's above 130 or 120, whatever it is for gifted. They could not come to school and still score 4s. The whole notion here is you can't just take a proficiency score at face value when a teacher says my results, my methods are getting results. The proof in the pudding is EVOS scores in North Carolina and SLO scores in South Carolina, not your proficiency scores. Proficiency is who you get. Growth, what you do with it. And so you have teachers who will argue, my kids always score real high. Well, you got high kids. Why wouldn't they score high? Unless you hit them on their head, they fell and hit their head, they're going to score 4s every time because that's who they are. I need to know, are you growing them? So don't fall. That's the banana in the tailpipe gag. Don't fall for it, they score high all the time. Well, they're the highest kids in the building. Of course they score high. That's why they're the highest kids in the building. But are you growing them or not? So this case harkens back to, when she says, I'm getting results with these kids. Are you really? You can't just say, well, these kids score really high on proficiency, so that this must be working. No, you got to look at growth for that one. So you got to remember, we report 2 different metrics. We report 2 different metrics we have a proficiency score, how high you score, and then we have a growth score. Did this year of instruction move you a year on your own scale? Not some standardized scale. On your own individual scale, did it move you a year of growth? And so Sean is right. We would go down and, show me the evidence that what you're doing, A, doesn't violate federal law on their IAPs, and then B, that it's working. Don't give me 100 papers with 100 on them. I want to see your growth. Are these kids growing? Are they developing? That's what when we're talking about when we go to the room to assess whether things are working or not. We got to make sure that A, we're not violating the law, and B, are they really growing, or you just got a bunch of high kids that score high with or without you? I told you 1,000 times, I used to tease my wife all the time when she was over at the IB demonstration school at Davidson College. Most important person in the organization was the custodian. As long as they could get the front door open every day, the scores walked right in. The smartest kids you've ever seen in your life. Amazing. But the question is not how high are they going to score, but are you growing them or not? Or are you growing them? Excellent presentation. All right, next group.
I believe our group can go. I believe Jessica's going to pull up and present the presentation.
Yeah, she's got that look in her eye like she's looking at her screen.
I am. Okay. I'll see if I can figure this out. Okay, I think I did.
There you go.
Woohoo. All right. Let's see now to get rid of everything. Oh. All right. So we're going to start off with, let's see. Since we already kind of know what's going on, I'm going to quickly go over a couple of these slides. So for one, the principal approach. First off, she should started off with having a culture of openness and mutual respect. It sounded like nobody knew what was going on in the building. Not only that, she didn't know what was going on in the classrooms. She should have had that open dialogue, should have known what the teachers were doing. She didn't. We've already talked about that. So for number 2, for her path, she should have came up with some strategies, or she can come up with strategies of making sure that developing in the classroom for their professional developments, having to know what's going on, giving those strategies to the teachers, and making sure that not only are the special ed students are getting the education, so are your higher level students, making sure that they're following the laws. And then she needs to make sure that she's monitoring, supporting, that she's going into the classrooms at least weekly, if not maybe daily at first, to see what's going on. Doing a drop by every once every day for at least 5 minutes, just making sure that she's monitoring and she's supporting the teachers. All right, for slide number 3, I'm going to take over for Lakeitha. And basically the key point that we have here, I'm sure she would have done amazing and she would explain all the points she has here, but the biggest takeaway that she wanted us to have for this one is that we're following the law. It doesn't matter what point of view it is, as long as the law is being followed. That's all that matters. And that those kids that have the IEPs, making sure that they're being followed at the end of the day. That's what's going to keep us out of lawsuits. Okay. Who had the next slide?
Lillian.
Oh, sorry. I thought I had Ishmael, the technical. So I don't know. Anyway, so the compromise. So of course, just like Jessica stated, the law must be followed to serve those exceptional students, both the academically gifted students and the students with the IEPs. So thinking about that, I didn't realize at the beginning reading the case study that it was mainstream, because I guess there was so much confusion because the teachers didn't understand. I also did not understand. So when you go to the next slide.
But I go back to that one. I want to make a point here again.
Okay.
mainstream or inclusion will be made by your district. That's not a school level decision because we staff schools and it works. I mean, we can't have one school that has one and another because we staff and we set up the support systems and now you can have, I'm not going to argue that one's better or worse than the other. They're just very different, and how you staff them and how you set them up, your personnel, your compliance technicians, all those people. And so your district has to make that decision because they're responsible. The federal money comes to the central office and they push it out to the school in terms of personnel and money for the programs. It's based on the framework that the district adopts. And there's some other programs that depend on that framework as well. That it all works kind of in combination. And so again, the school, just like the school can't decide their grading scale, they can't decide what their EC model is going to of delivery is going to be either. They can't decide how they're going to run their specials because PE, art, music, those things, because those are generally done at the district level, and you may have a part-time, you may have an itinerant, you may have art on the cart. Those kinds of things are made at the district level because it's a system that has to work. You got to understand that people think that principals are all powerful, can make any decisions they want, that lightning bolt shoots out of the end of their fingers. Unfortunately not. Especially when it comes to federal programs, you have pretty much zero control at your school. And I'll tell you my Title I story when y'all get done.
All right. So we're back on. So sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Lily. Oh, okay. I thought she was switching sides. Well, now we should have the collaboration amongst stakeholders. So we wanted to make sure that we emphasize the things that we use during our skip, doing these latest tasks, and then also focusing on the two-way communication and its importance. Also with the different learning styles and levels within the classroom, talking about the lower level students as well as the AG students. We wanted to highlight differentiated learning methods that she could use throughout the classroom. So Bloom's taxonomy, small group instruction, tiered assignments, and then also even choice boards to make it a bit simpler. We talked about like walk the schedule nights, parent and breakfast lunches, question and answer nights, different events to have the parents engage at the school to increase that collaboration. We also talked about conferences and then making sure that they're in a hybrid fashion so that you could accommodate all groups.
All right. So the technical coordinator, Ishmael, we talked about how, of course, he could have during the PLC done some professional development and training with the teachers for what's mainstreaming, versus inclusion. So that way the misunderstanding that the teachers obviously were having, they could really get that professional development to understand what they were supposed to be doing. He also could have gone over and looked at what's interdisciplinary and integrated teaching to support the teachers. So he could have done some collaboration, offer some PD on how to co-teach with the specialists if they decided to do more inclusion models. Also supporting the teachers on how to pull small groups and use other supplemental aids after that tier 1 instruction, because all students, of course, have to receive the tier 1, whether they were going to be pulled out or somebody was pushing in. So supporting the teachers on how that looks, how it sounds in the classroom. And then, of course, supporting the teachers with going through the MTSS process. I didn't realize that they already had IEPs, but he can also support the teachers with understanding the students' IEPs and like collaborating with like the special ed coordinators, which that's not on there, but I want to add that on. And then Miss Sylvia, the teacher. So she could have gone over some teaching strategies with the parents for what she's doing in the classrooms, with how she's using the peers. She could have also gone over some of the benefits for students with and without disabilities and some of those things that were in our inclusion and mainstreaming presentation. So like a reduced fear of human differences, accompanied by increased comfort and awareness growth in social cognition. She could have also talked about improvement in self-concept of non-disabled students. So there's lots of things that she could have went over, but then also having like those family conferences, like we've already talked about, with going over like assessment data to see how the students did, which should show an increase for everybody. And then of course get feedback and address any issues or concerns with parents then. And the most important takeaway that everyone has to remember is you have to follow the law so you can keep your house.
Right. Very good. All right.
And that's it.
All right. Let's circle back to Leandro, and then I'm going to use Jessica. Aren't you our resident EC specialist for this group?
Yes, I am.
Yep, she's it. So I'm going to circle back to you. So let's circle back to Leandro. What was the Leandro case about? It was about equalizing the money between the districts that wealthier districts can afford to supplement through the local budget their instructional program. You say, well, what does that mean, Dale? All right, here's what it means. In Charlotte Mecklenburg, again, we lit our cigars with $100 bills in Charlotte Met. We had plenty of money. We set up our EC delivery model was set up on mainstreaming with additional support, and we also with some push-in teachers, not an inclusion model, but with some additional curricular support for those. They didn't teach the kids directly, but they helped the regular ed kids. I mean, the regular ed teachers, excuse me. We could afford to do that. And then we call them CTs. They helped with the paperwork. They helped with the curricular, all that. And we had those. They were not paid for by the federal government. The local spent the money on those to help support our mainstream model. Now, if you don't have that, you probably got to have a different model. You're probably going to have to go to inclusion. Again, that's where that local money comes in, that differential. But again, you've got a district plan. You can't step outside of the plan for the school because we staff and organize around the district curricular framework. All right, so that's the notion of supporting where that local Leandro money, the money they wanted from the state to help spend more on the education of a child. That's what we're talking about here. All right, so I had a situation today where I told you a young man called me. They offered him an AP job. I said, is it a 1 or 2 year contract? And he said, I don't know. Is there a difference? I said, well, of course there's a difference. What do you mean? Is that, he said, well, I said, it's bigger than the length of the contract. If it's a 2 year standard assistant principal contract, that means it's a state job. That means that you have a property right by April 1st of the second year, April 1st, 2026, they've got to tell you whether they're keeping you or letting you go, and they have to give you a reason one way or the other. If it's a 1 year job, that means it's a locally paid, locally funded. There is no expectation. It's a 1 year end of year contract. It automatically ends at the end of the year. You have no property right to that job. He said, well, why in the world would it be a local job? I said, because if the place is wealthy enough, when they get their state allotment for assistant principals, sometimes the high school has enough for 3, but it's not big enough for that 4th AP, and they'd like one for every grade level. It's big enough for 2, but not 3 in the middle school. Or it's less than 400, and they don't even get an AP over at the elementary school. So how do you get those additional? How do you get those additional APs, media specialists, school social workers, school psychologists? How do you get those? How do you get those additional art and music and PE that are allotted by the total population in your school? How do you get the local pays for them? That's how you get them. And so that's the notion here. That's part of that framework. We're going to spend local money on this. Well, if we don't, and I've heard this argument 1,000 times, if we don't put some money behind art, PE, and music, how are we going to get the elementary teachers any planning time? Think about that one. So I hate to say this, if you're an art, music, or PE teacher, a lot of times your programs are being funded locally, not because we like art, PE, or music, but we're required by state law to give teachers so much planning time every week. And that's the way we do it. That's just hard, cold facts, folks. I hate if I hurt your feelings, but this, this is how that funding works. And that's what Leandro was all about. These districts that have extra wealth can take local money and they can hire that extra assistant principal or get that extra art teacher and do all of these kinds of things. They can get that extra compliance technician to help our EC people because of the model that we're using. That's what we're talking. That's what Leandro was all about. Was that we can have a curricular framework in our district that works better and better educates kids, because it's a system. If we can't give teachers planning time if we don't have a PE teacher to take the kids to. They can't just stand in an auditorium. We can't let them have 2 lunch shifts every day so the teacher can have planning. It's a system. Your district works as a system. It has a curricular framework. And all these things have to fit into that. And they tell you your allotment is this based on our framework. These classes have to work this way. Now, my Title I story. I had a Title I teacher. I had 2. 1 reading, 1 math. Mary Snow was my reading Title I teacher. She wasn't full time with me because I just had a Title I program. We weren't a Title I school. So she was with me 3 days a week, and she was at Mountain View 2 days a week. And one day she was, she'd been over at Mountain View that morning for some reason. Normally she just came, stayed all day, but for some reason, maybe it was a 2.5. But anyway, she was coming up 181 from Mountain View over in town, up 181 toward the mountains to Oak Hill. And her classroom passed her on the way. Half of her mobile unit, they had come and gotten it, didn't say anything to me, took her double wide trailer apart, hooked half of it up, her papers, her books, everything desk still inside of it, and went zipping down the road. And she passed her classroom with all of her papers blowing out on the side of the road as she headed up the hill. Can't make that up. She had a nervous breakdown on the spot. She was kind of a high-strung lady anyway. And it was like, what are you talking? Well, you don't own these programs, Dale. We needed that classroom somewhere else. And so you just got to find somewhere else in your building to accommodate her. That trailer belonged to Title I. We bought that trailer with Title I funds. We got to move it somewhere else. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that absolutely happened to me. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. You don't have control over those programs. They're run from a district perspective. You get this, you get that. This program's here, this program's there. You have this kind of EC program. You have that kind of EC program. We run this curricular model. We run that. We do this. We do that. These decisions are decided above your pay grade. Your job is to implement them, to follow law and policy. That's what implementation is. And too many times people think when they're training for this job, I'm a weak principal, so I get to be in charge. No, you just be the one responsible. You're not in charge, trust me. But I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll say it ever how many more times it's all about law and policy. Your district, and it arrives on your doorstep, and your job is simply to carry it out. All right, David, you and Althea got something for us tonight?
Yes. You share.
Favorite little group. I just love y'all.
I could share. I could share. Hold on. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I'm not trying to poke holes in this, but what does the fact that this school is located in South America have to do with anything?
Just to throw you off.
It worked. It worked. Thanks.
I mean, seriously, that's why I picked this one. I love all the pieces and parts of it, but I did it this way because everybody wants to argue that we don't do it this way or that way, or no, it's done this. And I took it out of the country so that we wouldn't be comparing it to ourselves, or so that we would look at the facts of the case rather than the location. That's great. That's a great point. I mean, that's exactly why I did it. It's a good case.
Also, parental rights on page 3. Althea, you okay if I ask a couple questions before we start?
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. So on page 3, Rodrigo brings up, has anyone asked the opinion of the parents of the special needs kids? What about them? Don't they have the right for their children to be educated? So that got me thinking. I went to the procedural safeguards just to take a look at them. And there is a parental right that if they disagree with the placement, that the child stays in that placement. So let me ask you this.
Stay put, yeah.
Let's say
that what that's called, just stay put?
And what if the parents love this model? They love this model where the AIG kids are teaching their kids. Could they not say, no, they're staying? At what point does the fact that this class was illegal to begin with trump the fact that it is going on right now? It's been happening. It's probably been written in some IEPs somewhere, because how could it not?
Well, see, that you just answered your question. Whatever the IEP, whatever the, again, federal law trumps everything else. So whatever's in the IEP is what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. I'm saying, what if the IEP may say the kids are being taught by AIG kids?
As long as it's in the,
well, it wouldn't say that. The most thing that could be in an IEP is they would be with peers. It wouldn't say taught by kids. It would probably say work with other peers.
It says peer buddies on it, and it never say teach. It says that they will be stuck with a peer to help them through activities, but it's not them teaching, it's them guiding.
Yeah, it's working with peers.
Yeah, and so whatever accommodation we come up, it would have to be reflective of both of the IEPs, both the kids giving and receiving, and that whatever's in the content of those is what we would have to do. And that's why I said I'm betting that it doesn't say in any IEP that you would be taught by a peer or teach a peer. I've never seen that. I could be wrong, but I've never seen that. I've never heard of that.
I've written a lot of IEPs where it's peer play or peer something, exactly, but it's never being taught by
that one would be I'm not an expert, but that one would be a new one on me. That's why I said whatever it says is what we would do. That's the whole notion. See, we've got the wrong driver in this case. That's kind of the overarching here is law is not driving here. It's what teachers want to do is what's driving here. And again, that's the whole point of this is to exemplify that rationale that we started this whole course with the whole idea of the evidence in this course was to build a legal master schedule. That's like the action plan and all the other courses. Evidences, we had an action plan, we had a growth plan, we had a marketing plan. Our plan this semester was that master schedule. It's got to be based on that rationale of 5 things, but it has to be in that order. I picked this case, designed this case so that it would exemplify what happens if you put 1 fifth and 5th first. That's the whole point of this case, is to show you what a mess you can get into if you let teacher input drive your delivery model rather than federal law. But David, that's a great question. When would we stick with what we got? If we got it in the IEPs and everybody went along with that, that's absolutely what we would do. But I don't, one of the things that you have to be concerned about, and I told you, if you have to, you just delay. When you're scripting these things as the LEA rep, if you don't know if that's possible or not, don't say, yeah, go along with it. I don't know if that's possible. Let's stop. Let's pause until I can find out if this is allowable or not. And so that's where that goes back to that point that I made. I mean, I had to do that a lot early on in my career. I had to do that a lot. Wait a minute, stop. I don't know if we can promise that or not. I mean, I don't know. I didn't know enough to know. But the good thing was I wasn't in Charlotte where everybody was watching us. In Charlotte, I was out in the woods. And where I didn't have as much pressure on me and when I say pressure, I didn't have as much pressure to know everything right now today. I could pause and go find out. The pressure when you're in the bigger districts, when you've got all these people watching you, you've got all the media, you've got all the advocacy, you've got all the legal, children's law center and everybody, you know, sometimes you just, you don't want to pause. You don't want to say, I don't know. And you get kind of railroaded into making decisions that really you can't support. And that's why I've said, if you don't know, stop and ask. It's okay to pause these things when you're in an IEP meeting and you're the LEA rep. And when it goes down this path, well, we want this and we're going to write this in. If you're not sure that that can be written in, and again, that's why I said, I've not sat in on a million of these. When in doubt, table the meeting. That's what Jessica said. That's the whole idea. If you don't know, you better stop. What I tell you, that's what Snoop said. If you don't know, you better ask somebody. That's where we are with this one. And David, that's a great question. I don't know. I've never seen it done. I can tell you in the 4 districts that I worked in across North Carolina, two poor and 2 wealthy. I don't believe it would have flown in any of those 4. Now, you know, again, and of course, I don't in those districts. I'm not sure that cooperative learning would have flown in the IEP as well during that time. That would nowadays, but I'm talking about that again. I'm a product of my time. We know a lot more now than we did then. So again, it's been a minute since I've sat in on an IEP meeting, but Jessica, that's why I said I'm going to defer to Jessica. That's why I said we're going to some of these expert questions are going to have to go to her, and I would defer. From my perspective, that would not be something that could be written in, and she'd have to chime in on that one.
So
I did 3 years all AU. I wrote 9 IEPs a year for 3 years, and never have I wrote in where kids teach another child.
Yeah, and so, see, Althea, it's talking about. I always have an expert or 2 or 3 in these classes.
It's not something you do.
Well, not only can it not be written in, the services would not match what's going on in that classroom. And while the services are not matching, the LEA, the principal, is supposed to be agreeing upon this. So she is going to go back on her. At the end of the day, she's going to be the one sued. So they can't agree to this and they can't keep going because it's not what's written in the services. So it doesn't matter what's going on in that classroom. It's what's in the services of the IEP.
A child can't render the service. It has to be from the teacher or a specialist that's coming in to do the service.
And thank you, Althea, for reminding me of that point that we talked about last night. They were talking about using parent volunteers. Oh no,
you can't do that.
No. Got to be somebody that gets a check. That's the first criteria. It's got to be somebody that gets a check. Now there's criteria beyond that. But if they don't get a check, we don't use them in direct instruction of any kind for any kid.
Yeah.
You know, that notion of, well, we'll just get parent volunteers to come in and help. No, we won't. No, we will not. I know that one. I do know one tonight. I know that one. They better be getting a check before you let them in there and start providing direct instruction. All right, please continue.
You want to start out, Thea, with your pretty PowerPoint?
You want to go to slideshow, or you want to do it that way?
It's whatever.
I like it like you got it. I mean, either way is fine with me.
Okay, he wants it that way. That's fine. Just
good.
All that is background. If you go down to 6, that's the questions.
Yeah. But hold on. Here we go. See, I want everyone to see all your work.
How pretty it is. That's important.
Yeah.
How might the principal approach? Basically, when talking with the staff, have like a staff meeting to talk about professional development, talk about the training with mainstreaming and inclusion, and also talk about the different ways so you can talk about the violations of the students to make sure you're following the guidelines of the IEP, and make sure, like we just talked about, what can and cannot be done when you are doing the services for the children. What path should Eugenia take? I quoted this right from some of the slides, talk about special education. Before she even talks to anyone, she should make sure she covers herself because someone is coming to her. She want to make sure she seeks the counselor for anything that could possibly becomes problematic and legal for legal counsel, because you got other people talking about children are not learning. You're talking about different things that address special education. So she wants to make sure that she's covering herself as a principal and anything that could happen in the school.
And it might help her to get out of her office to find out what's going on in the classroom.
Yeah, you think?
I think we covered this. Although I'd like to say that I'm going to pull this up real quick. When we talk about both methods of delivery, it feels like mainstreaming, I went back to this, is, certainly has the meta data. Where was it? When talked about the higher level of employment. Do you remember that slide, Dr. Lamb?
Yeah.
Like the
Yes.
integrated programs are right here. The integrated programs employment rate 73% versus the segregated 53%. I thought that was eye-popping.
Yeah.
So we talk about the delivery methods, and I know we say it doesn't matter, just whatever your school's doing, but it looks like there's some data that suggests that one is more
better
effective
than the other. And again, but the delineation there, David, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I've said this before: one costs 30% more than the other, and that 30% is going to come from the local.
Yeah, that's right. Because right there.
That's the decision maker right there.
Yeah.
One costs 30% more than the other, and that 30% would have to be local from the local budget.
Yeah, so I guess that answers that question somewhat.
Back to Leandro. I'm telling you, all paths lead back to Leandro.
Yeah, money.
Money. Money is, when I wrapped up my law and policy class for my superintendent class on Sunday, the bottom line was, our Sunday was about policy advocacy, and I finally summarized it for them. For those of you who hadn't figured it out, policy advocacy is the money. Who gets the money in the fight with the county commissioners, between the city county government, the community college, and everybody else that's hollering and screaming for them and wanting to give it to businesses like Facebook to come and bring no jobs and pay no taxes. You're just somebody else, like little street urchins. Can I have more, sir? Like in a Dickens novel. That's basically, but that's what policy advocacy is. It's money. It's getting more money for the local budget, more spendable money on education, not buildings, not capital, but more to educate the child. That's the fallacy of the lottery. The lottery only provides some more capital money and only a drop in its pork barrel, which means there's no allotment system, so still don't get it. But it doesn't feed the right side of the educational equation. You have the instructional side, you have the capital or the facility side. The lottery only feeds the facility side and only like less than 1%. The Leandro case was about the instructional side, getting more money to the local that they could hire that extra AP, or they could have one of these EC curricular models, or rather that the one that works better than the other one but costs 30% more. That has that school, that extra school counselor, or has that instructional facilitator. All these things that we get such a small allotment for, that the wealthy districts can expand where everybody's got one. Have music all day rather than on every Tuesday. Have an art room where kids can go rather than art on a cart. That's what we're talking about. That's what Leandro was about.
Have you given up on Leandro?
No. Absolutely not.
What's
I've
in
been
that?
fighting
What's
that. I've
next?
been fighting that fight for 31 years.
I know. What's next for it? Where does it go now?
Elections have consequences. Got to get, you got to break the supermajority in the North Carolina legislature
Mm-hmm.
so that they can't override the governor's veto every time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, right now we only have two branches of government in North Carolina. Anytime you have a supermajority in the legislature, they can do or undo anything the governor does. And so, there's got to be less than a supermajority. And so, the judicial and the legislative are at odds, and the tiebreaker has to be the executive. Well, right now, the tiebreaker belongs to the legislature because they control the executive branch, because they can override a veto with a supermajority.
Mm-hmm.
So what has to happen next is no supermajority in the elections in November if you're going to get any of that $2.2 billion that the executive that the judicial branch says the legislative owes schools. 2.2 billion now. That's a lot. That's a lot of cash. That's the only way. But that's what we're talking about here, is get some of this money to schools where they can spend it on educating kids and have the things that other places have.
Yeah. This is a good case study to come full circle with that.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Althea, you want to take this, or where are you at?
Yeah. When we think about collaboration for the families and the teachers, we think about professional development. We talk about trainings, different things where curriculum nights, we talk about stuff like that. All this supports how they're involved in it, the stakeholders, how they're involved in the decision process. Those are different ways that they can be involved in it. And those are the collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
I took a little bit of a different approach with our man Ishmael here. I mean, I worked as an academic interventionist. I feel like that's what maybe he can do some of this. Just collecting data. We use a MAP universal screener 3 times a year.
Yep.
Following those kids that are 10 percentile lower, get them into MTSS. I don't know. There's no mention of that in the case study, but that's just something I've done in the past. And I think Ishmael can do that as well, be an interventionist in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Althea, what do you think?
What action should she take? Have meetings with the families, explaining the LRE, talk about the IDA with them, talk about what it is, talk about the Individual Disability Act. Those are some things that they can do. Explain that some IEP does cause for some children to be involved with general ed for some part of the day, but not for them to teach their children. That's no, but some children are allowed in general education classrooms for some part of the day. But just explain that. And some ways you can kind of show what the children are doing is, like you said, have what we call showcase your work and see what's going on in the classroom. And that's ways that they can actually see what's going on into their learning environment. So that's
it.
Thank you. Is that
good job, Althea?
It was.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, my two experts here, Althea and Jessica. You can stop your share now, and we'll go back to the main screen. There we go. Would it be appropriate when we have these EC nights and speak to what y'all do, because I know y'all have these? It's not appropriate to enter into a discussion about the efficacy of the framework, whether you're doing include, because you don't have decision making on that.
No.
Well, it's whatever your district adopts as the framework, whether you're doing inclusion or push in and pull out, mainstreaming. I mean, that's outside of that. But what role would you have regular ed teachers play in that meeting?
You see, that's totally different. If we're doing a curriculum night and children are in our classroom, we're not tailored to exactly what's going on. Anything, any goals, anything tailored to a child's IEP, that's confidential. We can't even discuss that.
But when we're talking about the program to the parents about what our program is and how it's being delivered, we're not talking about individuals, but we're talking about our program delivery model. When we're having that night where we're meeting with parents so they understand what, we're doing mainstream. This is what it means. This is what it is. This is what you could expect your child to experience on a daily basis. When we have those parent nights where we're trying to keep them up to speed so they know what they're supposed to be getting.
We talk about the curriculum, exactly what the curriculum is. Basically, we talk about the schedule. We talk about activities. We talk about things that we do in the classroom from the time we get there, from the time that we leave. Those are the things that we discuss in a curriculum night. We actually show parts of the curriculum, like parts of ELA, parts of math, parts of social studies, parts of science. That's what I do on a daily basis at a curriculum night.
And so when y'all do y'all's curriculum night, do you do your special, do you do like an EC night or special pops? Y'all do it all together, right?
Let's see, I don't do EC no more, so I don't know. When I did EC, it was different from general ed.
Okay, so
when I did EC, I did only EC. So I talked only to my EC parents, and we only discussed what the curriculum was and what we did.
So that's where I was headed with this. I'm beginning to be concerned with some of these new laws that have come out in the last year or so, that if we differentiate those groups and they're identifiable when we invite them to school, that we may be in violation of a couple of these new laws that have come on the books lately. Has anybody other than me thought about that? Or maybe I'm just thinking, maybe I'm henny penny, the sky's falling. But forever in schools, we've had Title I night, and we invited Title I parents in. And we've had night where we brought all of our EC parents in. With this Family Privacy Act, I'm concerned if just by having them come in and identifying them and having them come in, that might violate their privacy. I wonder if we'll get lawsuits over that now if we continue to do that and not just start having general curriculum nights for everybody's parents there. Anybody thought about that? Anybody heard anything about that?
I haven't heard Family Privacy Act. Is that federal or is that North Carolina?
That's North Carolina.
I heard about it, and what I think is that, that's kind of almost like an indirect violation of FERPA.
It really is. That's what I mean. Basically, the Family Privacy Act is FERPA protections extended to the parents of the rather than the kids. That you extend the same privacy laws you're giving kids to parents.
But because technically anybody could show up to that night and find out whose kids are. If I had a child of my own who was not EC, I could show up to that night and find out whose parents.
Exactly, whose parents.
Yeah, that's a direct violation.
Now, see, when I did EC at the public school, it wasn't separated. I was on track 4, and all track 4 parents came.
Right, that's what I mean.
Track 4. I did year round.
But that's what I said. I've worked in some places, and I know some others that would do individual nights that were identifiable. The groups were identifiable. Out in rural areas, I've seen that happen. I actually had one in the 4th largest school district or 5th largest school district. They did basically an ELA night. Or ESL or ELL, multilingual, whatever we call it now. Our non-English speaking parents, we had a night just especially for them in that district. But I've seen, so my point is, even if you're in South Carolina and you don't have the new North Carolina Family Privacy Act, I would be concerned now about when I had my skip nights that I would have a EOG night or an EOC night, something like that, that, you know, that nobody's identifiable. I'd be concerned about doing nights where the groups might be identifiable. To Bill's point, you know, I could come and see what parents are there and know what kids are EC now. I would be concerned about that. That may be henny penny, but I'm just telling you, everybody sues for everything now. That's the next thing on the horizon is violating parent privacy now. I'm having to deal with that every day with my doctoral students trying to get their dissertations approved, and we're afraid to let them interview parents, or school districts are afraid to let them interview parents, and are not wanting to partner with us now because they're afraid of this law. They're afraid of lawsuits. Parents have become very proactive.
Question on this one, because this sounds a lot like the Federal Privacy Act requirements. And Privacy Act only protects information until the owner of the information voluntarily divulges the information.
Right.
I mean, I got to protect your social security number, but you can shout it to the room if you want.
Yeah.
There's no violation. So I was saying, when we're talking about interviewing in districts and letting parents be interviewed, that would seem to fall under the parent chooses to divulge the information, then they're not protected by a privacy act.
Well, what they're saying, and I agree 1,000% with what you just said. What they're saying is we could get in trouble for giving you their names to contact them to let them make the decision.
Oh, it's the directory information. Got it.
That's why Sean, that's why I agree with you, Sean, but that's why I was saying it was an indirect violation.
Yep.
Because a lot of parents may not know their rights, but you got some people that do. But if they felt that was the only avenue to talk to their school about special education, that they felt they had to go, and that's why it's an indirect violation, not a direct violation, which we're stuck up in courts. But I agree with you, Sean, on the same thing. But it's like I say, indirect versus direct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But to the point about parents, they don't mind that we talk to them. They just don't want to give us their names or their contact information. They think that will open them up for a lawsuit. And so, yeah, I mean, they have to volunteer. You know, we go through IRB. I mean, everybody has to be voluntary. We don't do any forced, or we're not allowed to do prisoners or anybody that's compelled to do it. We're not allowed to give incentives, money, or pay, or do any of that. So that part's taken care of. They're all voluntary. Problem is you released my name and my email address to somebody.
Yeah, we also live in a world where years ago, a lady sued McDonald's for her coffee being too hot.
Yeah. I mean, I can't keep you from getting sued. My job is so that you just win. Like what Al Davis say, former, the late Oakland Raiders owner, just win, baby. That's our problem. That's our job. Is we're probably not going to get sued. Our district, we may be named, but our job is limit our liability. Understanding nonfeasance, malfeasance, misfeasance, had a duty to act and didn't, acted inappropriately, didn't know it but did, or intentionally acted inappropriately. And what Sean just said is that might be misfeasance. They know in terms of a violation there. I didn't know it was wrong when I gave those names out, but yeah, I wasn't supposed to give those names out. They don't care that we are talking with their parents, but what they say is we support your study, but you got to figure out a way to get to the parents and not go through us. And so I think they're trying to do a lot. I'm not, but a lot of folks are trying to do Facebook now, and cut and get to the parent groups on Facebook. Now, I think, myself, I'm not a Facebook or Twitter fan. And I could get started on that rant, but I won't because our time is about up. All right. Anybody else have anything else tonight? You did a great job. I couldn't tell you how proud I am this semester. I've had a great time. Told you, it's like Jackson Brown said, the only time that seems too short is the time we get to play. This is my opportunity to play every week. I appreciate you indulging me and playing along. I've had a great time this semester. I've appreciated your work. And remember, I will keep my shell open until August 28th the first day of the fall session, you can continue to put work in. I'll grade it, give you feedback. You can always call or email, text. I'm always available. I'm old. I never sleep. I don't have anything else to do. So
Thank you,
except
Dr.
to
Lamb.
be
Thank
involved
you.
with y'all. I appreciate you.
Thank
Enjoy it,
you.
sir. Thank you.
Yes, you
Thank
can
you, Dr.
continue to
Lamb.
work on the SOP. I'll grade it and move right on.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all enjoy the rest of what do we have left of our summer.
Not much.
It's over.
It's over.
Kids
Summer's
have
over.
fun.
It's over.
The gong strikes at midnight today. It becomes August. Summer's over.
If
Yeah.
February could last as long as July, I love it.
Yeah, it's
But
been great. No, y'all have been wonderful. Y'all my favorite group. As always, you're my favorite. I appreciate you. Thank you
thank
all.
you so much.
Everybody have a
Thank
good
you,
rest of
Dr.
the summer.
Lamb.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Lamb.